This is Daming, but not on Earth. There is also an extraordinary empress who can destroy the country with only one hand. This is a world of steam, with trains, airplanes, televisions, and telephones, but hidden everywhere are chaotic demons, and the hearts of people and demons are constantly fighting. There is a lot of malice towards the passersby here. It is impossible to change the world, it is impossible for 2 lifetimes, only by working hard to hold on to their thighs can they survive like this. Cunning to save trouble and living a long life, stability is the strongest voice. Gouda vows to earn a retirement pension in this mediocre world. Keywords of the novel. Emotion de Ming no pop-ups, Emotion de Ming TXT complete collection download, Emotion de Ming latest chapter reading. Chapter 1001. This great Ming is too strange. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1001. This great Ming is too strange. There were signs of intense fighting at the scene, but no traces of the second person were found. This kind of suicide is unimaginable. In a messy guest room, the detective of the Zhongjing Prefecture Serious Crime Department introduced the situation to Gouda and the others. We first thought of that possibility, but this guy has enough weapons to arm a squad, as well as sniper rifles and such. Tomorrow is the big day for the new emperor to ascend the throne, so he doesn't have to guess anything he wants to do. This kind of thing is related to your royal guards. I'm here to see if you can answer or not. When did your Zhongjing mansion become so generous? In the past, even the patrol department would compete with us for cases. The sleazy-looking old man grinned with yellow teeth. You're so busy, aren't you? If you can throw out such a brainless case, it's really a good plan. The detective chuckled and didn't blush at all for revealing his worries. I was originally planning to find the 7 cities army in horse division, but who would have let your master and disciple drink tea across the street? They tugged at each other, while Gouda held his arms and squinted his eyes. It seemed like he was scared by the scene of blood splashing everywhere, but in fact, he was using his ability to observe. The bedding on the bed was torn apart, the tables and chairs overturned, and the paint on the walls was scratched and stained, mixed with large radiating bloodstains. There are 7 or 8 weapons scattered on the ground, including revolvers, submachine guns, carbines, rifles, and even shotguns with scopes. The middle-aged man sitting against the wall opened his mouth wide and had a big hole in the back of his head. One hand pinched his neck, the other hand landed on his leg, and he held an automatic pistol stained with red and white. Looking at the bloodstains pulled out from the wall, this guy seemed to be sticking his feet off the ground and then shooting himself. Gouda let go of himself, pulling his perception out of his body, and his sense of reality suddenly shifted. It's like the whole house has turned into a flat surface, and everything, including myself, has been pieced together into a bizarre picture. Above that, there was another one who looked at the painting coldly. Perhaps it is because the soul has never integrated into this world, and God wakes up every day with this strange feeling. It takes some time to calibrate in order to fully immerse himself in this world that is completely different from his previous life. In this perspective, the space has added another layer, with fine strands of blood-red light weaving into a blurry human figure. Walking through the room, one can distinguish clear movement trajectories. However, the blood shadow is gradually spreading, and in a while, it will be difficult to see clearly. Blinking his eyes, sensing his return, his sense of reality recombines, and Gouda walks up to the bed to explain his discovery. This guy was originally sleeping soundly, but suddenly woke up and tore at the blanket like an enemy. Jumping off the bed and kicking the chair and table, Gouda gestured and picked up the broken legs of the chair by the bed. It's very strong, but it's still within the range of a normal person. He ran back and forth, jumping. Looking at the stacked footprints on the ground, and these smudged marks. He rolled on the ground again, fighting against the imagined enemy, and then grabbed his own neck and ran into the wall. Gouda approached the blood-stained wall and said, in theory, he couldn't pinch his neck and lift himself up, but shooting himself while jumping against the wall would create the illusion of being lifted up. Pay attention to this bloodstain, not only in the downward direction, but also in the upward direction. The footprints under the wall are also heavy, repeatedly stacked, indicating that he jumped more than once. Turning to face the old man and detective, he spread out his hand and said, "What does this mean?" The detective's eyes lit up and he said, "Nightmare." The old man clapped his hands and said, "Sleepwalking." "That makes sense." The detective reached out to pat Gauda's shoulder, only to find that he was not tall enough, so he had to pat his arm. The observation of the high school captain was meticulous, and he is really good material for criminal investigation. How could he be buried in the patrol office of the Royal Guards? Why not come to our serious crime department and be promoted to my level in 2 to 3 years? The old man's face was wrinkled with dried orange peel and he sneered, "Tell us the level of the Royal Guards. How much can you get for your retirement pension?" Speaking of the detective teasing and scratching his face, "Of course you're pointing to retirement benefits, Xiaoli. As a college captain, he's so young and talented, with a bright future ahead of him." "Don't talk about these things," the old man replied to Gauda's expression. "We can take on this case, but it's a suicide case. In the end, we'll have to transfer it to the weapons department of the Ministry of War. It's up to you." "I always feel a bit suspicious." The detective looked at the bloodstains on the wall and shrugged, saying, "But the captain of the high school has linked up the front and back traces, and this should be the way things are. This guy infiltrated Zhongjing with weapons, intending to assassinate, but the pressure was too great and he suffered a mental breakdown and committed suicide. Let's transfer it to the military and horse department and let them solve it on their own." On the surface of the matter, Gauda only revealed this person's behavior without any concealment or tampering. As for why such behavior occurred, he was well aware that it was not a nightmare or hysteria. Seeing the blood-red thread in a special field of vision, God knew that this case was related to a psychic. This world has extraordinary powers, but most of them are deeply associated with demons and are considered taboo. Gauda doesn't know much about the specific details, but the power corresponding to the blood light happens to be the most common blood demon power. This middle-aged man possesses the power of a blood demon. He was invaded by the blood demon into his soul, and his heart fought against the demon's heart. In resistance, he killed himself. Gauda doesn't want to know more, let alone be implicated. Using his discovery to guide the detective to draw conclusions unrelated to the psychic, so as not to trap himself and his master in the case as soon as the case is handled. He still wants to earn a retirement pension, whether it's revealing his identity as a superpower or getting caught up in the struggles between superpowers. It deviates from his life goal in this world, which is to earn a retirement pension. "You have sharp eyes and can deceive," said the old man with relief as he left the inn. "This case needs to be reported. If it's really related to a psychic, we'll all be implicated." Gauda smiled and said, "Didn't you learn it from your master? Collecting cases and earning credit is not the style of the master, nor is it his own. He and the master have a deep consensus on not taking risks. After this hard work, today is considered the end of the job." The old man squinted his eyes and immediately gave back. "I'll go to Ingmao, so you can go straight home. Remember to hurry up tomorrow and get through these 2 days, and I'll be relieved." "Congratulations to master in advance," said Gauda with sincere congratulations, which was also the future he longed for. The old man is a small flag of the Imperial Guards patrol station. With accumulated resources and achievements, he can receive a general flag level honor and retirement treatment. Calculated based on half of the total flag salary as retirement pension, one can receive 80 gold dragon coins per month, equivalent to 8,000 yuan in the world of Earth. In my previous life, I worked as a coder in a third-rate game company, but ended up working overtime and dying suddenly. My monthly salary was only 6,000 yuan. What kind of spirit is a traveler with the goal of earning a retirement pension in life? Gauda watched the old man leave and looked up at the sky. Through the dense and disorderly electrical wires, one can see a low-pressure layer of lead ash clouds. It is clearly a crisp autumn day, and the sky in Zhongjing is still so oppressive. The children were walking back and forth on the tram tracks in the center of the street. The tram was still slowly moving far away, and the driver leaned out and cursed loudly, but instead cursed the bicycle climbing on the carriage. The cyclist let go of his hand and turned into the alley, where sparks burst from the slanted end of the electric pole. The small car spewing white smoke suddenly crawled out of the alley, and the straight car kept braking, pulling its sharp whistle to the sky. This is not the earth he lived on in his previous life, it is another world. He was kicked here by an unknown mastermind and reincarnated. It has been 19 years now and he still doesn't quite adapt to the art style of this world. It is complicated, chaotic, magical, and even absurd. If you want to use similar concepts to describe it, the curry double dot flavor hot pot is inserted to look up at the stars, and the label on the table says, 100% vegetarian, about 1/10 of it. In addition to the wonderful steam technology and the lack of mobile phones and the internet, the world is not much different from the world of the Earth in other aspects. Some are like Shanghai Beach in the 1940s, which even has TV, but the extraordinary power is hidden in it. The continent where he is located is only one of the 4 continents, but it is larger than the land area of the entire Earth. The billions of Zhendan people living on the mainland are no different from the Chinese people, and the rulers are actually the Great Ming, a version of the Great Ming from another world. The Zhendan continent ruled by the Ming dynasty is only a small part of this world, and the creator also finds that the elements are not rich enough. Not only do humans have various subspecies, but they are also filled with races such as elves, lizards, dwarves, orcs, rodents, vampires, and even chaotic demons. Each race also has several subspecies, making this world as flashy as if it were specifically used for making board games and selling chess pieces. Gouda was once ambitious, but the mastermind behind the scenes was greedy for the benefits that should have been provided to the travelers. He doesn't have a system or golden fingers like Grandpa with him, only unique abilities that can be observed. The extraordinary power of this world is not cultivated, and the correct usage of this ability is self-evident. You can see how far a superpower can run. He has made many attempts to make a name for himself in this world, so as not to tarnish the reputation of the traveler. All the efforts ended in a crash at the beginning, and in the end, he could only admit that he did not have the protagonist's halo and enjoyed the subtle reincarnation technique of compensating for the behind-the-scenes dark hands. Gouda's father was also a small flag of the Genie Guard. When he went on a business trip, a plane crash could be considered as his death in a job. Gouda replaced his father and joined the Genie Guard, serving as the lowest-ranking Genie Colonel in the Central Capital Patrol. There is an ancestral courtyard in the capital, which has entered the system and has a job equivalent to a special agent's imperial grain. The job of the royal guards patrolling the city is to become a criminal police officer and a police officer, so being clever won't get involved in tricky cases. What else can Gouda pursue besides retirement benefits? Calling for a human 3 bouncer, Gouda got into the car and shouted, "South 12th Street West Section." 3 silver horns, said the coachman and lion, wearing a small yellow hat and a yellow vest. On the big day when the new emperor ascends the throne, let's go out and work twice as much to show filial piety to the boss. Oh. The coachman instantly changed his face and said, "Master, why did you condescend to ride in the car of the little man? It's free. Do you still want this little money from the imperial guards?" Gouda closed his coat, covering the license of the imperial guards and the holster under his armpit. "Just a silver horn at the old price, ride steadily and don't bump me." End of this chapter. Chapter 2002. License for Armed Killers of the Royal Guards. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2002. License for Armed Killers of the Royal Guards. Your school is on vacation today, isn't it? Stay at home and don't run around. Early in the morning, Gouda patted the door and shouted, "What are you still listening to on the radio? Can't you read more books?" You have to manage it. An extremely irritable voice came from the door, and it was his sister Gao Miao. I'm still sleeping, don't disturb me. This girl is 4 years younger than Gauda. When she was a child, she only followed the fart, but as she grew up, she became disgusted with Gauda. After her father passed away, Gauda took the top class and she also attended a girls' school, which was in the early stages of adolescent rebellion. He only looks at him directly when arguing, like a sworn enemy. Knowing that she was just stubborn, Gauda didn't criticize her anymore. He followed the iron ladder at the end of the corridor and habitually glanced at the neighboring courtyard. His small courtyard is an ancestral property that has been passed down for more than 10 generations, covering an area of over 300 square meters. The backyard is a 2-story small building with toilets and running water, and the front yard is a living room, pavilion, and small garden. The courtyard next door is the same, but it is densely covered with vines and weeds, and no one has lived there for many years. Calculating that it had been vacant for 10 years, Gauda sighed inwardly, and the small face in his memory had become extremely blurry. That night, in the childlike era where he had fantasies, he was admiring the rare and clear moon scenery in Zhongjing on the corridor when he was hit hard by small stones thrown from the neighboring yard. It was a little girl of 5 or 6 years old, a bare child, but under Gauda's tame, she quickly became his little fan. Brother Gauda, what are the pockmarks on the moon? Are those stars really bigger than the sun? We also have a round and big star under our feet. So why didn't we fall? Gauda and the little girl became childhood sweethearts and lived a year without a guess. The cliché development of the story reached the point where the little girl swore, I will marry Brother Gauda when I grow up, and the next day after saying these clichés, the little girl cried goodbye to Gauda and moved overseas. After all, it's just a childhood memory, and many details are hard to remember. What's your name? Oh, Xiaoli, no wonder I can't remember. It's such a tacky name. What seems to be on your mind, kid? Seeing the master, the old man was quite sharp, and it was evident that Gauda was not in a good mood. Childhood memories churn out, evoking a faint worry for Gauda. In his previous life, he was just a single dog, will he still be in this life? He said perfunctorily, it's nothing. I had an argument with my sister, and that girl always makes me feel uneasy. Lingling is also like this, the old man said of his granddaughter with empathy, causing the elderly to complain. These girls are really out of style now. 1,000 years ago, don't talk back, you had to make a fuss about eating. 1,000 years ago. The changes in this world's times were really slow. Gauda held his hands in the pockets of his half-sleeved jacket, hunched his body, and followed the old man, jogging over the tram track to the opposite side of the street. The old man entered a shop, and Gauda looked at the neon lights on the front door. The blue eyes and red lips of the big wave blonde beauty flickered alternately, and the sign was written in Sinian and Bartois with the words, Farsi Small Tavern. Have all the foreign taverns opened here yet? Gauda shook his head and shook off the sense of confusion in time and space. After all, this is not the world of Earth. Time seems to be stagnant here, from childhood to adulthood, there are always gloomy clouds above the head, and the streets are always scattered with white smoke. When I was a child, foreign taverns and pastry shops were everywhere, and the changes were nothing more than moving from here to there. The wooden-framed glass door closed with a crisp jingling bell, and the hustle and bustle of the street turned into the background noise of radio broadcasts. The old man sat in the corner, tapping his fingers on the table to urge him. Your distant sea golden rum, young master, the waitress, dressed in low-cut maid attire, brought the wine as she sat down. She leaned low, her eyes sparkling with autumn waves that were even more intoxicating than amber-like liquid. Gauda turned his head and pretended to tidy up the wingless gauze hat, not embarrassed to look, but afraid that the button would fall on his face. Whiskey. It's the old man's turn to offer a luxurious and minimalist service, along with a complimentary white fruit eye. The old man stared straight at him, his nose flapping rapidly, and his orange-skinned old face seemed to have been buried in the ditch. His gaze was like an invisible tentacle sticking behind the waitress, causing the old man's head to rotate more than half a circle, swaying and swaying along until Gouda coughed softly before turning back. It's really realistic. Back then, I was also Panan from Xicheng, the old man sighed bitterly with his mouth. The treatment anywhere is not worse than yours, okay, just a little bit worse. The weak reincarnation technique also gave Gouda another benefit, which is to have a tall, fair, and beautiful supermodel-level little white face. For Gouda, this is not a good asset. It is indeed very convenient to carry out work in the customs area, and the troubles of hiding from wealthy women and even the brothels and duck shops have given him a headache. It's not good to drink at this time, right? We're still on duty. Gouda cautiously changed the topic. The old man was about to open his mouth, not just a few glasses of foreign wine to enjoy. And the tavern is too dark, I still like to drink tea in the open tea house. You're not even 20 years old, don't follow me in everything. The old man struggled to pull out a revolver stuck in his belly and slapped it on the table. There's nothing I can do, it's a bit strange here, I haven't figured it out yet. Just in case, I have to squat here today. Originally it was a task, but Gouda was even more puzzled. The Xicheng Yamen of the 7 Cities Army and Horse Division is nearby, how could there be a problem? So, just in case, on the big day when the new emperor ascends the throne, we can't be too cautious. The old man shook his glass and said, it should be okay. We can rectify it. We have been rectified and obedient a few days ago. If we can't rectify it, we don't need to. The mysterious families above are all staring at us. Gouda suddenly realized that the old man had the same intention of lighting up his gun. Pretend to be a plainclothes patrol to deter any troublemakers. If it's a tricky character who is too lazy to deal with a small patrol. I have been with my master for over a year, and there is still some tacit understanding. Gouda did not take out his own pistol. The revolver was a standard accessory for plainclothes patrols and was used to scare people. The Black Star automatic pistol is a standard feature of the Royal Guards, and the accompanying Royal Guards license is also known as the killing license. The throne of the late emperor has been sent to the ancestral mountain, and the royal family, civil and military officials, under the leadership of His Highness the Crown Prince, gathered in the hall to worship and send off the spirit. A black and white TV was hanging on the bar, broadcasting the news of Gouda's master and disciples coming here to squat in the pit. The coronation ceremony is currently taking place at the Temple of Heaven. Audiences, please do not leave. Our reporter from Zhongjing TV will report back at any time. For the new emperor. The old man raised his glass, for the Ming dynasty. Gouda raised his glass and said, for retirement. The old emperor who reigned for 82 years passed away, and the 50-year-old crown prince finally became a regular. After these busy days, the old man will retire, and he will also transition from an apprentice to a formal worker, following the footsteps of his master step by step towards retirement. Do this job of the royal guards well, not for meritorious service, only for no mistakes. The wine flowed down his throat, sour and bitter, and Gouda didn't like it at all. You also have to wait until you get married before thinking about this. Those daughters of thousands of households and gorillas, don't you really think about it? After a glass of wine fell, the old man still opened a box called Urging Marriage. Marry anyone, you will be stable in your life and still need a retirement pension. Don't be your child with high vision and dreams like Princess Shang. Gouda smiled foolishly, this joke is really funny. Speaking of the princess. Princess Xiaoli is already the eldest princess. I heard she has also returned this time. She's not as old as you, so she should be like her aunt, the daughter of a holy mountain, and do evil all her life. The old man talked about the affairs of the heavenly family that ordinary people love to talk about, but for Gouda, it was something above the clouds and he listened casually. As the conversation was lively, the old man suddenly stopped speaking and Gouda cautiously disguised himself as a drinker. Their bodies and faces were wrapped in cloaks, covered in suspicious characters. They walked past their table and swaggered into the workspace behind the bar, while the bartender and receptionist ignored them. The trouble is like this, the more you want to avoid it, the more you have to approach it. The old man spat in disgust. Foreigners' wine is really unpleasant to drink, it's far worse than our burning knives. Can it be a superpower? Gouda didn't make excuses, the breeze that the person carried had a strange coolness that was quite penetrating. Just go take a look, it's really not our turn to deal with it. The old man pointed to the pistol and gave his disciples some encouragement. Having this thing can at least save one's life, as for something even more powerful. The old man spread his hands and made a helpless gesture. If it's the guy who's not being watched by the top who wants to cause trouble, whether we're sitting here or running away, the consequences don't matter. It's better to try our luck. Feeling the hard metal that was causing pain in his ribs, Gouda felt slightly relieved. This is a world of extraordinary power and also a world of technological advancement. No matter how strong a single superpower is, it is impossible to confront a country with airplanes, tanks, and artillery. Even in the face of the royal guards with only handguns, psychics will not act rashly. Behind the genie way, there is not only the government, but also the emperor. Externally, there are naturally supernatural beings. The pinnacle of superpowers is legends, and above legends there are saints. They are all non-human beings who are not afraid of guns and cannons. The old man is right, encountering such people causing trouble makes no sense whether to run or not. Gouda did not abandon the necessary caution. He hugged his arm and pretended to be hesitant, entering a state of soul out of the body withdrawal, observing the traces of the cloaker. I didn't see anything, there was a faint yellow light and shadow, but it wasn't completely layered, which is also a situation that Gouda often sees. This result shows two possibilities, one is that there is no abnormality, and the other is that the opponent's strength exceeds his observation limit. It should just be a misunderstanding. Gouda followed the old man towards the bar, not realizing that the second possibility really existed. Most likely it's a hidden stake of the army in horse division, patrol, search. The old man waved his pistol and shouted fiercely, "Who was that person just now?" "That's the one who went in." The bartender and waitress shook their heads in confusion, both saying they hadn't seen them. The old man pushed them to the bar and crouched down, greeting Gouda. "Prepare to call for support." Gouda pulled out his pistol, holding the intercom in the other hand, and followed the old man into the workshop behind the bar. The bartender and the waitress crouched on the ground with their heads clasped, looking at each other. Suddenly, a snowflake fell on the host while the TV screen was playing the magnificent figure of Zushan. The coronation ceremony has been temporarily suspended due to unexpected news, and our reporter is waiting outside the temple for further updates. The host trembled his throat as he spoke, so nervous that he almost fainted. End of this chapter. Chapter 3003. It's so hard to earn retirement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3003. It's so hard to earn retirement. The wine cellar is not large, and the wine racks are arranged along 3 walls, with only a narrow space for 2 people to stand side by side in the middle. The shelf was filled with various colored foreign wines, and the rich aroma of the wine made Gouda feel dizzy. From the workshop to the wine cellar was a dead end, but I didn't see that guy, and the situation became increasingly apparent. Gouda was about to press the button on the intercom, but the old man stopped him and said, "It's not urgent, we need to find something like a secret door first." It is this truth that if the general flag, who is nominally on standby in the branch, leads a team to run for nothing while drinking and playing cards, they will definitely be wearing small shoes and affect their retirement benefits. Gouda and the old man looked at the foreign wine on the wine rack separately, carefully examining each bottle. If there is a hidden door, it should be a switch like this. Quickly, Gouda noticed something unusual. A bottle of wine emitted a slight chill that seeped into his heart, and it was the strange feeling that the cloaked man had given him as he walked by. He casually turned the bottle and said to the old man, "It seems like." Before I could finish speaking, my eyes darkened and the sky and earth spun around. When the reaction came, he and the old man were rapidly sliding down the narrow spiral pipeline. The pipeline slides without leaving any hands and cannot stop at all. "You did it," the old man exclaimed from behind, "your luck is always so good. But your hands are always so cheap." "I don't want it either." Gauda was extremely regretful. How could he not control his hand? After turning for a long time, just when Gauda suspected that he was about to descend to the center of the earth, he finally flew out of the pipeline and fell onto something cold, hard but still somewhat elastic. Then the old man flew out and kicked him against the mud wall. "It's a big deal now," the old man shouted as he rubbed his waist, knowing exactly what it meant. "This should be a cave, it's so dark that you can't see anything. The temperature is very low, and the faint smell of blood and even decay is quite familiar, much like a freezer for storing corpses. At the critical moment, I really can't count on this thing." The old man threw down his phone, turned on his flashlight, and saw at least 100 corpses piled up in layers. Gauda almost vomited. These corpses were all naked, their chests were cut open, and their hearts were dug out. The upper part of the head is also missing, and it is empty inside. What's even more terrifying is that the bodies are all male, and there's nothing underneath. Worry, the old man was also scared and almost lost his flashlight. It's from the 4 major pirates. The giggling sound of strange frogs echoed in the distance, one after another, gradually approaching, and then a faint green light lit up. God only felt his scalp tingling. Black skin bean sprouts. The old man raised his gun and fired, and the sound of the gun echoed through the vast underground cave, deafening. The green light swayed and dimmed in pairs, while the other spots of light did not disappear, let alone recede. Gauda fired at the green light that was clearly in his pupils, and the moment the gun flame burst, it faintly illuminated the slender and short figure of the opponent, also illuminating his colorless cheeks. This is a dark elf commonly known as Black Skin Bean Sprout, cruel and lustful, known as the 4 great bandits along with vampires, rodents, and orcs. In the tens of thousands of years of history on the continent of Shandon, the 4 major bandits have penetrated various dynasties and even been the main culprits for the downfall of many dynasties. Why is this happening? Pulling the trigger, Gauda's stomach churned with bitterness. Why does this damn world have such great malice towards itself? Is it so difficult to even earn retirement benefits? 7 bullets were fired in an instant, and with the precision that Gauda often trained by running to the shooting range and playing with guns, he hit at least 3 shots. However, there were many black-skinned bean sprouts like gangsters in Hong Kong movies. The old man threw away his revolver and fired another magazine with the Genie Wei gun, but still couldn't stop the opponent from approaching. Fortunately, Hype Duya is stubborn and has always rejected firearms, otherwise their master and disciple would have turned into sieves long ago. However, the sound of whistling was incessant, and hidden weapons such as blow arrows and flying knives shot from the head, which could not be stopped by the silk armor worn inside. The dark elves pounced and rolled, flanking both sides and even behind them, covering each other back to back. Gauda was struggling to find a way out when the old man suddenly let out a scream. Under the glow of the flashlight, Gauda saw a flying knife enter the old man's left eye socket, causing spasms in his chest and abdomen, and he felt like vomiting again. "Run quickly." The old man's voice had never been so loud and powerful before. "Run up high. Go call for reinforcements, come on." Gauda wanted to run, but this shout made him unable to move his legs. "Master! Hurry up." The old man kicked him a somersault, and a cold wind blew over his head. "We have to run out and get a pension." The old man reached his peak at this moment, scolding Gauda while aiming with one eye and shooting down one with one shot, firing without fail. Gauda gritted his teeth and pulled out his legs before running away. In this atmosphere, he couldn't say anything about your wife's upbringing, and even anything was unnecessary. However, he still hoped that the old man would have no regrets. "Master, I will take good care of Lingling." He shouted so loudly, but the old man roared angrily, "You're not allowed to seduce the spirit." Old man, he was very satisfied with Gouda as his disciple, but he was very uneasy about Gouda as a little white-faced person. Not only did he not have the idea of matching him with Ling Ling, but he also never allowed the two to come into contact. "You should stay with your sister." Then the old man changed his tune. When he heard him yell, "It's a few days before I retire. It's really his mother Dan. It's far away." The final movement was the old man's screams and the squeaking of black bean sprouts, as well as the rustling footsteps chasing behind. Gouda tried hard to suppress the tears in his eyes, otherwise he wouldn't be able to see the path illuminated by the flashlight clearly. Running up a passage from the end of the cave, winding and circling several times, Gouda suddenly transformed from soil to artificially carved stone slabs. He ran into an underground hall at least the size of a basketball court. There were no footsteps behind him, and Gouda stopped to catch his breath. He quickly checked the intercom. There is still no signal. Looking up, a black shadow suddenly appeared in front of him, which frightened him and made him jump back a long way. A good offering. The candlelight suddenly lit up, and there was a dim light in the hall. The black figure was the same cloaked figure I had seen before, emitting a chilling chill. Her deep but clearly feminine voice was like a cold and sticky snake's letter, licking God's eardrums. The cloak slid to the ground, revealing a plump figure, with dark skin shining with a colorful halo. The seductive and explosive curves made people's hearts beat twice as fast. Gouda's heartbeat did indeed double, but it was just fear. Black-skinned bean sprouts are a matrilineal society. Mother bean sprouts are naturally promiscuous and crave for flesh. He has heard many rumors about catching male creatures for meat festivals, followed by jokes like, "If you tie you to black-skinned bean sprouts, you can sell them for a big price." The corpses I just saw all died in extreme pleasure and pain, and the tools have to be confiscated and archived after completion. This is by no means the purpose of his life in this world. Gouda instinctively raised his gun, and the other person not only did not dodge, but also squeezed out a nauseating smile on his dark and narrow cheeks. "It's not just good, I really have a heart for it." After seeing Gouda clearly, the slender pointed ears of the dark elf stood high and twitched rapidly. She reached out to grab Gouda, moaning incessantly in her mouth. "Little brother, we are black and white paired with yin and yang, creating a joyful atmosphere that even gods should envy. We will have each other and never be separated." Her hands were still several meters away from Gouda, and the cold air like invisible tentacles penetrated Gouda's head and heart, binding blood vessels and tendons, strangling his thoughts and thoughts, causing him to quickly lose control of his body and even mind. Gouda feels like he's getting wet. This guy is really a superpower. He is still a powerful superpower who can invade the soul and control the body without any trace. "Give up resistance, hold on to me, get moving." The cold air stirring in his head and heart whispered softly to Gouda, and the force carried by him was completely irresistible. He involuntarily lowered his arm and took a step forward. "No, we need to find a way." Although he didn't feel it was of any use, Gouda instantly entered a state of soul leaving the body, withdrawing his perception, which was the only thing he could do. A string in his mind bounced like a piano string, causing God's sense of reality to suddenly shift. The icy power from the dark elf slid away from his mind and body, falling into the gap between the dislocations. Surprisingly effective. Gouda quickly regained control of his body, stopped and raised his hand, pulling the trigger. A 10mm bullet with a cross was ejected from the barrel, one shot shattering the palm of the dark elf, the other shot entering from the left eye and firing from the back of the head. The next 5 shots all hit the chest and abdomen, and the top-quality scenery suddenly turned into rotten meat on the butcher's chopping board. The body of the dark elf kept shaking with the gunshot, and when the pistol made a clicking sound, she surprisingly stood steadily. Damn it! It's actually a forbidden one. She was extremely angry. I want to eat your soul. The battered palm wriggled and twisted, and the flesh melted into flesh-colored limbs, covered in mouthparts resembling squid whiskers. In an instant, the literal meaning of the squid whiskers stretched out, wrapped around Gauda's neck, and lifted him up high. Gauda was in mid-air without any support, holding the pistol tightly but unable to change the magazine. So my own abilities are not suitable for being the protagonist. It's right to strive for retirement benefits, but the thief will not allow me. Gauda was filled with grief, anger, and despair. He didn't have the face to catch up with his master later. The subsequent events were too terrifying, causing his sense of reality to constantly fluctuate between misalignment and reorganization. End of this chapter. Chapter 4004. Although the routine is old, she gave it too much. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4004. Although the routine is old, she gave it too much. The chest and belly of the dark elf were cut open by invisible claws, and the internal organs rolled and wriggled, stirring into a ball and transforming into various shapes. A beautiful head slowly pulled out from the chest and then, like a candy puller, pulled out the curvaceous upper body. When two bloody arms supported the dark elf's shoulders and pulled his lower body out of his abdominal cavity, God's sense of reality returned and his fear reached its peak. Blood and water evaporate into smoke between light purple and pink, and the flesh and blood blurred figure is covered with pink skin like CG rendering, presenting a perfect and delicate body. Even though his calves were still trapped in the belly of the dark elf, turning the body, which only had a layer of flesh and a skeleton, into a eerie background in the mastermind of horror painting, God had to admit that it was a creature far beyond social security level, capable of demonizing mortals. Several flesh-colored tendrils protruded from the bloody head of the dark elf, connecting to the back of the newborn body. With a thud, they pulled out the remaining parts and pushed them to God's eyes, where their breath blended together. Surrounded by the warm, sweet, and fragrant scent, Gauda's fear suddenly dissipated. The soul is gone, and the fear is naturally gone. However, Gauda is not like this. He still strives to maintain that sense of detachment, and thus becomes increasingly estranged from the world, only feeling that what he sees in front of him is not real. This monster in the form of a creature is on the computer screen. Even if it is perfect, it is still flat. At best, it is just a high-quality casting material. So he calmly watched as purple ripples emanated from this beautiful yet terrifying monster, distorting the surrounding light and shadow. He calmly endured the monster's crimson long tongue licking his chin, a bit itchy, and even wanted to laugh out loud. His soul seemed to have been licked out of his body, ready to rise up with his tongue. But it just seems that there is not enough realism. In fact, there was a hazy shadow pulling up from Gauda's body, like a layer of transparent thin skin. Hey. Things have changed again, but what surprised me was the monster. It didn't pull the thin layer of skin out of Gauda's body, instead its tongue stuck on it and couldn't break free. It tilted its head and opened its mouth, its red eyes flickering rapidly, completely incomprehensible to this situation. You're not a forbidden one. It becomes unusually slow to speak, not because its tongue is stuck, but more like its brain or even soul is stuck in glue. You are the mediator. Speaking of this, it stopped making a sound, just its eyes twitched slightly, and all its strength was spent on holding on to God. Both sides maintained a strange posture of confrontation, enveloped in amber by the passing time. It feels extremely long, but in fact, it's just a moment. The monster's body suddenly shook, and a slight white light appeared on its forehead. The white light, like cracks on the ice surface, rapidly expands towards the face, neck, and even the body. The monster wanted to react, but its tongue was still stuck to the transparent thin skin of Gauda, unable to move at all. Quickly, the monster's entire head, along with its tongue, froze into a snow sculpture. The monster's eyes were red and bright, as if it was about to use some big move. The thicker white light split it vertically in half from top to bottom. The terrifying howl that almost shattered his heart shook the hall, and Gauda fell to the ground. In a daze, he saw a white shadow fluttering down. This is not the end. I will come back. The dazzling purple smoke spewed out from the shattered monster's body, creating a strange, non-human, indescribable face. More beautiful than the creature just now, more terrifying than the monster just now. As if a voice from the underground said, "Accept my farewell gift." The violent explosion shattered Gauda's senses, and he was hit by the shockwave on the walls of the hall. He fainted before sliding down. If this is the end, it's pretty good, at least experiencing a sensory feast of curiosity towards Max. The faint fragrance woke him up, with a scent reminiscent of gardenia in early summer. Some are familiar, but there are obvious differences. Opening his eyes, a stunningly beautiful yet cold face filled his sight, causing him to scream out in fear. "I am human," the other person's voice was both cold and pleasant, as if an ice edge was striking. "That evil demon has been driven away by me. This is not only a person, but also an extremely beautiful ice and snow girl." Her snow-white long hair was covered in a layer of ice-blue halo, swaying and flowing as she spoke. Her facial features are exquisitely crafted like perfect dolls, and her lightly parted red lips bring life to her. The silver-gray eyes cast a glistening tenderness, like moonlight casting from the night sky. "No, this is not a person, it's a goddess." Gauda stared at her in a daze, and saw the pointed pink earlobes amidst her snow-white hair. Surprisingly, she was also an elf, just a light elf known as White Bean Sprout by the people of Jindan. The sharp ears of legitimate light elves are as outrageous as those of dark elves, but her earlobes are not so obvious. She should be a half-elf of mixed race. "Who are you?" the girl asked in a calm and indifferent tone. "Why did you come underground to entangle with the evil demon?" "Jean Way Patrol West City Branch, Jean Colonel Gauda." Gauda opened his coat and revealed his license to the Jean Way. During the investigation of the suspect, he fell into a trap and landed in the ice cellar below. There was also a group of black skin. Dark elves, and my master had already died in order to save me. There's nothing to hide from the small patrolling city guards, but this girl seems to have come specifically to pursue this dark elf. Is it someone from the temple guards or the feather forest guards? The Ming dynasty in this world has the so-called 3 guards of the imperial guards, which are the Miaoling Guard, the Yulin Guard, and the Genie Guard. The temple guard guards the ancestral mountain, while the feather forest guard guards the palace city. Compared to the bulky and peripheral Genie Way, the two still maintain a literal sense of mystery. Most of the big shots mentioned by the old man come from these 2 units. The little royal guards are brave and lucky. The girl did not know whether to disparage or approve. "Your soul will be eaten as a dim sum by that guy later. I have packed up all the dark elves below. Since you are the royal guards, I will leave this matter to you." Speaking of this, she suddenly let out a low moan, and Bayu's cheeks blushed and her breathing became cloudy. Gauda only then noticed several bloodstains on her chest and gave her a favorable evaluation as a scarce resource. The girl turned her head to look in a certain direction, frowning as if worried about something. Looking down at him again, he looked very carefully, making Gauda unclear and also following suit to look at himself. At first glance, one could see the difference. There were wounds on the back of one's hand and arm that had been pulled out, and the blood was normal red. However, the blood on the girl's wound was close to purple, shimmering slightly. The girl waved her hand and emitted an invisible aura, causing the surrounding stone slabs to shatter and the soil to roll over, automatically building a circle of earthen walls. Then she untied her belt and took off her clothes. Even in the dim light, her slender and crystal-clear upper body, as warm as white fat and jade, was still clearly visible, making Gauda's eyes almost jump out. She was as calm as if the wound was on her finger, pointing to her chest and saying in an unquestionable tone, "Lick." Gauda worked very hard to make his eyes move, and if it's any later, he will have cramps. As for this sudden benefit. No, he is naturally willing to help others, but isn't this routine too old? Gao De felt a fever in his throat and said, this kind of thing needs to have enough emotional foundation before. The girl frowned, her tone so cold that Gao De trembled and said, I want you to treat my injury. This kind of hero-saving beauty story I told a little girl 10 years ago, doesn't it feel cliché? Is this a bit cliché? He actually said it out loud. The girl blinked and said in a sudden tone, indeed, such stories are always mentioned in those vulgar and uninteresting novels. With a wave of her hand, she took out a thick stack of things and patted Gao De's chest, saying, this won't be cliché anymore, it's just a trade. Hurry up. The stack of things shimmered with a golden light, scorching Gao De's heart. Gold ticket. A gold ticket worth 100 gold dragon coins. At least 100 copies. He only earns half a gold ticket a month, and now he has earned over 10 years of income. If converted into a retirement pension, it will be enough to support him for 20 years. Gao De's heart beat faster than his eyeballs would burst. He took the golden ticket and put it in his pocket, serious as if accepting a mission to save the world. You have the final say. Gao De spat out black-brown saliva and felt like he had chewed a handful of Sichuan peppercorns in his mouth, so spicy that he wanted to cry. He looked up and was startled again. The girl's cheeks were flushed and she was breathing like fire. It's effective, but it's too late. The girl still had her indifferent expression, pressing against Gao De's chest and saying, lie down. Isn't this good? Gao De stuttered, I still. Another stack of gold tickets slapped on the left face, another stack of gold tickets slapped on the right face, and the girl impatiently repeated, lie down. This is really not good, this trick is really too old. Gao De collapsed on his back but she gave too much. End of this chapter. Chapter 5005. Who approves? Who opposes it? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5005. Who approves? Who opposes it? To the east of the Xindan continent, the originally rounded coastline concave into a deep and huge bay, like the fat belly of a big-bellied man being punched hard. The bay is shaped like a crescent moon, exceptionally regular, which raises suspicions that it is a masterpiece beyond the power of nature. In the legend of the Xindan people, a terrifying natural disaster occurred tens of thousands of years ago, where stars fell to the ground and all living beings became extinct. This bay was used as evidence and named Falling Star Sea. Several rivers originating from the central part of the mainland flow for thousands of miles from west to east, and here they flow into the sea. Zhongjing is built on the vast plain crisscrossed by these rivers. It is nominally a city, but in fact, it is a supercity cluster consisting of 4 cities in the southeast, northwest, and 3 coastal ports, totaling 7 cities. A large and towering mountain range suddenly rises from the plain 300 to 400 miles away from the bay, surrounded by the 4 cities of Zhongjing. The highest point of the mountain range reaches straight into the clouds, like a towering pillar. This mountain range is the secular hub of the Xindan continent, and the people of Xindan call it Zushan. The heavenly temple, which worships the heavens, is here, and the spiritual tablets of emperors throughout the Ming dynasty are also here. The Wuzhong Palace of the Ming dynasty can only squat on the southern foothills of the mountains with grievances. The Wuzhong Palace is majestic and magnificent, but compared to the ancestral mountain, it is just a drop of dew hanging on the edge of lotus leaves. Zushan is guarded by the temple and tomb guards. Normally, not only officials, but also royal families and relatives are not qualified to enter. The heavenly temple at the highest point of Zushan was only opened and the new emperor ascended the throne. The imperial tradition of the Ming dynasty is that only by holding a Taiyan firmly sitting on the state, can one be considered recognized by heaven and obtain the position of the emperor. It is unclear to most people whether this tradition is just a ritual or, as rumored, has practical use. You should know that the late emperor ascended the throne at the age of 15 and reigned for 80.2 years. There were not many people who lived longer than his reign. Today is the day when the late emperor returned to the spirit and the new emperor ascended the throne. The royal officials finally had the opportunity to appreciate the scenery of the ancestral mountain and glimpse the true appearance of the heavenly temple. But at this moment, the heavenly temple was plunged into an invisible storm, with thousands of royal officials shouting loudly and crying softly. About 1/3 of them simply fainted, and the magnificent and spacious hall was as chaotic as a death row prison leading to the execution ground. Shut up! The tall and beautiful black-haired girl stood under the Dan Emperor, with a voice that should have been as crisp and pleasant as a yellow warbler, but due to extreme anger, it turned into the roar of a female tiger. This voice carried the literal meaning of fierce wind and lightning, shaking everyone's clothes and hunting, swaying their bodies, and the entire hall was instantly so quiet that needles could be heard falling. How could this be? The girl's gaze turned to the throne above the 9-layered Dan Emperor, which was the throne of the state. Rice ears are the bottom, clouds are the back, and the armrest is a 5-clawed golden dragon with precious pearls in its mouth. It wraps around the back from the right hand and then lowers to the left hand. On the throne sat a person dressed in a black dragon robe, with a 12-crown crown on his head. His left hand rested on the dragon head with a pearl in his mouth, and his right hand held a sword upside down. That is a long sword with an ancient design, with the sword body slanted and inserted at the tail of the dragon, only a small part inserted. Judging from the posture of this person raising their arms and turning sideways, it seems like they have drawn their sword and stopped in the latter half. Brother Huang. Through the imperial curtain, I saw the face that was no longer a living person. The black-haired girl's red lips trembled slightly, like the intense ripples in the eyes of the deep autumn pond. This is the new emperor of the Ming dynasty, who has been the crown prince for 50 years and finally ascended to the throne today, but now he has become a stiff and cold corpse. This is not a title he can afford, miss, said a woman in white standing behind the black-haired girl indifferently. He did not become emperor. The black-haired girl blinked her eyes to calm her mind, turned her head to look at the imperial officials in the hall, and impatiently scolded, "What are you waiting for?" Zhuxian once said that if the father can't do it, the legitimate son can't do it, the legitimate son can't do it, the illegitimate son can't do it. In short, there must be a Zhu family bloodline holding Taya and sitting firmly in the state. Who should it be? In the hall, there was a commotion, and several middle-aged young people dressed as princes kept stepping back. Some fell to the ground, using both hands and feet to step back, leaving long wet marks on the ground. No one here is qualified, except. On the other side of Emperor Dan stood a tall bald giant who was suspected to be a deity descending to earth, with a thunderous voice. The black-haired girl's figure had surpassed that of an ordinary man, but only reached the height of the giant's chest. The officials below became noisy and interrupted the giant's words. You can temporarily suspend the throne in time and space, and when the kings have the heart and the strength, then choose the wise to stand up. Zhuxian also said that time changes and policies change. The state of our Ming dynasty is as stable as a holy mountain, and the imperial officials are capable of taking care of national affairs. Why rush to establish a ruler? I don't want to see the throne hanging empty, the problem is no one can sit up now. The TV station is still broadcasting, and the matter of the throne can be considered in the long run. We need to deal with the TV station first. With a loud bang, the hall trembled slightly, but the giant paused the long axe in his hand. The state cannot be without its owner, and the Taya cannot be suspended in the air. The giant stopped everyone's discussion like a fly. If the candidate is extinct, we can only follow the order of the holy mountain and let them decide, but there are still candidates left. He bowed to the black-haired girl and said, Your Highness Royal Highness Princess, you are also qualified. The girl was stunned and said, Me. Her pupils sparkled with light, and she nodded suddenly, Yes, I've forgotten that I'm also a member of the Zhu family. The woman in white behind her sighed deeply, "Miss, you need to think carefully." The courtiers of the royal family looked at each other, and unexpected events followed one after another, leaving no one to speak for a moment. The girl shrugged and sighed, "I don't want to, but at this point in the matter, what else can we do?" The bald man picked up the body from the throne, and a group of tall and mysterious clothed men who were only half a head shorter than him took it over. The crown slanted down, the curtains parted, revealing a yellow-brown skull. The skull's mouth was wide open, twisted and dislocated, as if suffering indescribable pain before death. The girl stepped onto the Dan Emperor and sat down casually like entering a small tavern, holding the dragon head with one hand and the sword hilt with the other, inserting it back into the dragon's tail. There was a faint tremor between heaven and earth, as if some power dispersed in the mortal world had converged on the throne, pulling up majestic waves. Just being swept by the lingering waves in my heart, my soul was also lost, and there was no one standing in the hall under the Dan Emperor. The precious pearl and the long sword shone with a sparkling white light, illuminating the black-haired girl like a deity carved with white jade. When she spoke, the statue came to life and became a deity descending to the mortal world. "Is that all?" The girl looked confused and said, "It's very easy, brother." "What's wrong with Big Brother? How could he not bear it?" "Perhaps he thought he would never sit on the throne of the state again," the woman in white coldly judged. "Even the dark elf demon's son with a demon seed dares to be raised as a concubine, and he never thought of sitting here." The waves dissipated, the heavens and earth stabilized, and the courtiers woke up like a dream, finally having the power to speak out. "This goes against Zushuan. Zushuan never said that the throne could be given to a woman. How can I make it? Princess Xiaoli, get up quickly. The throne is not a dressing table. How can the emperor be a woman? No, absolutely not. Daming would rather have no ruler for 100 years than have a female lead for a day." The opposition and even the scolding were as noisy as boiling pots, and the girl's face darkened. The already heroic willow leaf eyebrows gradually rose. "You even put aside the threat of chaos's resurgence, just to oppose me becoming the emperor of the Ming dynasty and the creation of an empress." The girl bent down to look at the courtiers, like a falcon overlooking ants, her tone so cold that everyone shuddered involuntarily. At this moment, these people remembered something that should not have been forgotten. Xiaoli, the youngest daughter of the old emperor, is a saint from the holy mountain, and the saint is a non-human person who destroys the country alone. I was just trying to help you carry the burden. Once I have a suitable candidate, I'll let them out. I don't care about anything like the crown prince and empress. The girl sneered coldly and scanned the crowd with lightning-like eyes. "Now I've changed my mind. I'll be the queen. Long live my emperor." With another loud bang, the bald giant knelt down and shouted. The continuous rumbling sound startled the people in the hall, thinking that the entire hall was about to collapse. Then they were stunned and their eyes straightened. There were originally 2 rows of samurai sculptures standing on either side of the throne, each one standing 1.5 tall, each wearing black heavy armor, holding long weapons such as halberds, spears, axes, and hammers, with various animal heads such as tigers, leopards, bears, and wolves on the chest. The beast's mouth was wide open and its fangs stood erect, as if it were devouring someone. The neck above the beast's head was empty, surprisingly all headless warriors. It's these samurai sculptures that moved. Long live the emperor! Long live the emperor! Long live the emperor! They knelt down and shouted together. The storm-like cries echoed through the hall, and the officials of the royal family seemed to be swept up to the heavens, their bodies and even their souls being struck by lightning. In a daze, the girl said again, "What about you? Who agrees? Who opposes?" End of this chapter. Chapter 6006. Repay my hard-earned money. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6006. Repay my hard-earned money. In the dimly lit hall, Gauda broke free from the emptiness of, what is the meaning of these 2 lifetimes, only feeling like a dream. To be honest, he has made a lot of money both mentally, physically, and materially, but he always feels a bit uncomfortable. Remembering the hardships of the wealthy widow and the duck shop madam, Gauda sighed deeply and ultimately sold himself. My pockets are bulging, and the empty hole in my heart has been filled quite a bit, at least it sells well. The white-haired girl completely regarded him as a charger, unplugged it and left, leaving Gauda filled with melancholy and countless questions. What is her name and what is her origin? Is that evil demon really a demon that ran from chaos into the mortal world? What are the prohibitionist and the mediator? Why do we have to use this old-fashioned way of healing? If your pockets are bulging, you don't need to pay attention to details. He, a small person with no protagonist aura, is not in the same world as a big shot like her. The more you know about hidden things, the faster they will rise. Be a contented salary thief instead. The hall was in chaos, with the pile of rotting corpses like black skin bean sprouts being handled by the white-haired girl, leaving no residue. Gauda walked out of the hall with weak legs and stumbled along the upward path. The bulging pocket always reminded him to reminisce about the indescribable experience just now, and then pulled up his guilty heart. The master's bones were still cold. After wandering through a winding mountain path for a long time, I arrived at a spacious cave. You can vaguely smell the foul smell, like fermented household waste that has been fermenting for 10 years. Gauda is overjoyed, not far from the drain. Zhongjing is a city with a history of tens of thousands of years. The buildings of various dynasties have been stacked and formed countless underground worlds through historical changes. The drainage system built over the past 1,000 years of the Ming dynasty is the latest level. The world beneath the drainage system is so complex that it becomes nauseating, and it has become a hiding place for black and evil forces and even the 4 major bandits. Fortunately, the underground world is managed by the Department of Justice of the Ministry of War, which exempts him from the daily drilling of underground holes by low-level Jinui. Pulling out the intercom, there was still no signal, and he was so angry that he smashed it to the ground. Master is right, the purpose of this thing is to vent anger. A faint sound of footsteps sounded, and as soon as he raised his gun, he was enveloped by several dazzling white lights, making it impossible to open his eyes. Drop the gun and lie on the ground with both hands behind your head. Be honest with the affairs of the royal guards. We have a murder license. Do you dare to move around and see if you die here? No one knows we won't send notices to our families. The familiar baton reading shout made Gauda and Gao Gao's heart slowly fall. He skillfully threw his gun and knelt down to embrace his head, while shouting, I am also from the royal guards. I am from the patrol station. The tall and burly guy, who looked like a leader, looked at his face with a flashlight for a while, then picked up his gun and intercom to scrutinize, making a clicking sound in his mouth. Almost looked like a woman, with such a handsome and pretty little white face, who specializes in patrolling the area of Green Sleeve Square. Just by the way, not specifically. Gauda forgave this guy for insulting his personality and urgently revealed that there were dark elves below. His master's life and death were still uncertain, although he must have cooled down, he had to say so. We're here for this, said the leader with a beard on his face. You should be the royal guards, that's right, but we need to go through the necessary procedures, you understand. Of course, Gauda understands. When he and his master encounter colleagues in dangerous environments, even acquaintances have to undergo body searches and inspections. He raised his hands high and urged, hurry up, maybe my master still has breath. As soon as he mentioned the feeling of his pockets bulging, it was like a thunderbolt exploding in his mind. He thought to himself that it was not good and instinctively turned around to avoid the outstretched hand. With a loud bang, a heavy stack of gold tickets fell to the ground, causing both Gauda and the other party to be stunned. Pop, another stack pop, stack again as if the air had solidified, everyone lost their breath. Don't don't misunderstand, listen to my explanation. Gouda tried to squeeze out the air from his chest, but was burned by several plasma-like gazes. I said this was what I sold myself for, do you believe it? After all, he didn't say it. Aha! Got a spy. The leader flipped over Gouda and pressed him to the bone, then pressed his knees tightly against his neck. Hands with a soap smell were carefully groping on him, not even letting go of his toes and nostrils. Really? It was a misunderstanding. Gouda's vigorous cry for justice was of course ineffective. The little patrol guard didn't even grow hair, carrying tens of thousands of gold dragons on his body, or the consecutive gold dragon tickets just taken out from Jin Shenghui. The leader sneered, it happens to be related to the case we're going to handle, misunderstandings. This is my hard-earned money, Gouda said in a hurry, that's right, hard-earned money. The leader laughed even louder and said, sweat money. Little Bai Lian, did you sell yourself to any goddess? You have already said the answer. The leader's knees were as hard and heavy as steel, and Gouda suspected that his neck was about to be crushed. I can't breathe anymore. Gradually, he lost consciousness after being pushed several times. Gouda woke up and looked at the stained ceiling. He was stunned and reorganized his sense of reality. With a movement of his head, his neck felt like a pillow, and he gasped for breath. He realized that he was wearing a neck brace, wrapped in some hot medicine. You've been sleeping for a long time, like a pig. The leader collapsed on the opposite sofa, wilting as if he had been moving bricks all day. If there's not a drop left, can we not sleep soundly? Gouda sat up from the sofa with a stiff neck, seeing clearly that this was an indirect waiting room without windows, probably underground. The ventilation fan on the wall was spinning weakly, not only failing to improve the air filled with smoke and odor, but also sending in another odor that was familiar but couldn't remember where it had been smelled. I can only apologize for the injury on my neck. It was difficult to manage at that time. Our medicine was very effective, and it will heal completely in a while. The leader held the cigarette and puffed out the cigarette ring, and upon smelling it, he knew it was a low-quality cigarette, 1 silver horn and 1 pack. Your master's body has been found, only a small portion, the rest is in those black bean sprout stomachs. He seemed to be reciting lines, his tone without any ups and downs. The case has been closed, so just pretend it hasn't happened before. If you feel okay with your health, I'll send a car to take you home. Don't ask who I am, you should understand. Gouda felt relieved and stood up wanting to leave. The refreshing feeling on his body made another thunderous sound in his mind. His hard-earned money. Golden dragon ticket. Speaking of this leader, it seemed like he had hemorrhoids, showing his teeth and twisting his waist to grind his buttocks. Don't dream, the leader said. Don't even talk about you, we can't keep you. Our commander personally called to inquire, and the commander of the Yulin Guard brought a large team of people to take the stolen money. That's physical evidence. Do you understand? Look at your young man's righteous indignation, thinking that what was found on the black skin bean sprouts is yours. Gouda's mind was buzzing, and he had to work hard to suppress his emotions to prevent himself from exploding on the spot. It was taken away, I took it away, let's go, aren't you still okay? It's good if you can live well in our profession, the leader continued to enlighten him. I don't know what's going on in this case, and I don't need you to explain it. We don't have the authority to ask. After experiencing being constantly beaten by society in his lifetime, Gouda gradually calmed down after taking a break. Indeed, being able to live is not bad, as I still make a profit. And the master's bones are not cold, only thinking about his own gains, it's too selfish. Yeah, I ran into a case managed by a prominent figure above. I was lucky enough not to be transferred to the southern rainforest tree fortress and the northern snowy plain ice house. I also have to thank the crown prince for ascending the throne and granting amnesty to the world. After completing his psychological construction, Gouda chuckled and prayed, with the new emperor above, the world is in good luck. The new emperor is above. The beard chuckled and said, "You really don't know." "What should I know?" "It should be said. The Empress is on the throne." Her beard puffed out a smoke ring again. "Just as you were sleeping soundly, Princess Xiaoli ascended to the throne and became the first Empress in the history of the Ming dynasty." There was no sign of joking on the scruffy face, and Gouda took a deep breath. The roller coaster-like emotional journey before turned into smoke, with countless thoughts flashing and thundering in his mind, bombarding his only remaining desires in this world. Worry, retirement benefits are in danger. Just go back and watch TV and listen to the radio, and you'll know. However, due to health reasons, the old crown prince voluntarily gave up the throne to Princess Xiaoli. Just listen to this. The news of the old crown prince's death has not been announced yet, and we'll talk about his illness in a few days. I guess it's this trick. The old crown prince died tragically when he sat on the throne of the state, and none of the princes and relatives present had the courage to take over. Princess Xiaoli had to sit on her own, said the bearded beard, showing off insider information. The rumor is true. Every emperor of the Ming dynasty must have the ability to suppress chaos, otherwise he will not pass the test of the throne of the state. The old crown prince is said to have raised a demon with black skin and bean sprouts, and his power has been drained. When Gouda was a child, he heard from his father that 1,000 years ago, chaos was rampant on the continent of Shandong. With the help of the Holy Mountain, the founding emperor of the Ming dynasty used the sword of Taya to sweep away the chaos, but was unable to completely eliminate it. Therefore, he built the seat of state in the heavenly temple to seal it. Sealing can usually suppress chaos, but when the chaos demon king takes shape, it requires the support of the Zhu family bloodline to seal and eliminate the demon king. So Taizu left his ancestral teachings that only the Zhu family, who can pick up the sword of Taya and sit firmly on the throne of the state, are qualified to become the emperor of the Ming dynasty. The rumor came true, and Gouda was not too surprised. This world is already very strange, and no matter how strange or mysterious it is, he is not surprised, unless it is related to his personal interests. At this moment, he thought of another thing. Was the dark elf with demons hidden in its body the same as the dark elf raised by the old prince? You seem to be doubting something. It seems like you don't know the inside story either. Who pressed the cigarette into the ashtray and rubbed it a few times, holding his arm and lifting his leg. We cleaned up the place where you and your master had an accident, and I also have many questions. However, the truth is meaningless. What matters is the outcome. What will happen in the future? What will the Ming dynasty ruled by Her Majesty the Empress look like? The sigh of the beard is also Gouda's heartfelt voice. Although the Ming dynasty was technologically advanced, it was still a feudal dynasty, and the concept that a woman without talent was virtuous was deeply rooted. There are women in the Ming government and even in the royal guards, but they are only sporadic embellishments. Girls' schools have also become popular, but they teach things such as knitting flower petals and medical care. The Ming dynasty has never had an empress, and it is difficult for the royal family, nobles, and civil and military officials to identify with her, fearing that she will be in turmoil for a while. In the worst-case scenario, can retirement benefits still be earned? The beard stood up and patted Gouda's shoulder. Speaking of which, how much does it have to do with us little people? As long as De Ming is still here, we have to do whatever we need to do. Don't daydream about going home. By the way, let's first say that we need to put a headband on you when we go out. This is a confidential location. I hope so. Gouda complained displeased. The temple here is not big, it's quite grand. The residence seems to be built next to a public restroom, with a dilapidated reception room and a leader who can't even afford a good cigarette. Gouda doesn't think this mysterious department is of such a high level. Maybe it's just a small branch outside the Mingyan organization of the royal guards, doing dirty work such as running errands and doing odd jobs. Rubbing his chin with a beard, he looked indifferent. You're too polite. Some people say we're even more disgusting than the public restroom at the train station. It's very fitting, we rarely entertain repeat customers. When Gouda left the reception room, his beard collapsed and he returned to the sofa. His legs were thrown on the coffee table, and the old hardwood coffee table made of it made a cracking sound. My retirement pension, he groaned as he pressed his forehead. Why is it so difficult to earn a pension? End of this chapter. Chapter 7007. Farewell on a Moonlight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7007. Farewell on a Moonlight. At the beginning of the moonlight, the bustling Tianmiao temple finally calmed down. The freshly made Empress Dowager of the Ming dynasty, Zhu Moli, walked down from the Danhuang and impatiently removed her crown. It's really uncomfortable, even if it's just for the ceremony. It's really annoying. The Empress casually threw the crown to the eunuch, untied the jade belt around her waist, and took off her dragon robe. The eunuch was so frightened that he quickly knelt on the ground with his head pricked, afraid to cast a single glance at the Empress, even though her clothes were still in good condition under the dragon robe. The light red half-sleeved cover is embroidered with flowers and birds, with arrow sleeves, white clothes, narrow legs, and white pants inside. Wearing a pair of casual short top leather boots, it may seem like a fashionable female student in a women's school who wears men's clothing. Shaking her head and scattering her hair in a bun, her black and shiny long hair flowed like a waterfall. At the age of 17, the Empress transformed back into a stunning young girl, and the solemn hall lit up. "We need to find someone else to design the dragon robe and crown," said the Empress with obvious fatigue on her eyebrows. In most of this time, her efforts have exceeded the sum of the past 16 years. "And you, what do I want people like you to do?" She is referring to the eunuch. Who is the eunuch? The one kneeling on the ground threw himself all over the ground, and several others around him also knelt down, kowtowing like garlic, and repeatedly apologizing. "This is the price of having a hot brain, my miss." "No, my Empress." A woman in white walked up from afar, her calm tone carrying a deep sense of helplessness. "The fate of billions of creatures has fallen on your shoulders, and your every word and action, even a subtle expression, will be scrutinized by people in various ways. You have been bound to this throne for your whole life, free and unrestrained in the holy mountain, and the days of doing whatever you want are gone forever." The attendants greeted Chief Yuanban one after another. This Fusang girl named Yuanban Ai was nominally a maid of the queen, but actually she was the same as sisters. As soon as the queen ascended the throne, she was appointed as the chief steward of the inner court, serving as their immediate superior. "Xiaoli, you have finally come back." The Empress relaxed her tense shoulders. "Who made me surnamed Zhu, and the Emperor can do whatever he wants." Xiaoli sighed again and told the eunuch, "Your Majesty doesn't need your service. I will arrange everything and leave." The attendants, as if granted amnesty, knocked their heads with a loud thud and disappeared like oil on the soles of their feet. "I understand what you said earlier." The Empress looked at the empty hall, her expression dazed and her gaze blurred, as if she was reminiscing about the royal officials who had gathered before. "I still have to treat these burdens as treasures and guard them firmly. As you can see during the day, they shout 'Long live' on their mouths and curse in their stomachs. If I don't do something next, I'm afraid the imperial edict of my queen won't even be able to spread from the endless palace. I hope they can find someone to replace you, so they will rush in and force you to abdicate," said Xiaoli, taking the headband handed by the Empress and helping her tie her hair. "That's too late. I'll be the queen and see those guys who hate me so much that they have to kneel and kowtow to me, shouting 'Long live.'" With their long hair tied in ponytails, the queen shook it twice and asked the giant standing on Dan's side like a sculpture, "Little kitten, can't you help me more? For example, find some clever Xing Tian to help me with government affairs and military management." The giant sighed like a gust of wind brushing through the forest. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty. It's already the limit to allocate some alternate Xingtian to help deal with the demons in this world. Our task is even more important." After a pause, the giant added, "Please call me Xiao Maomi, Your Majesty." "Okay, little kitten." The Empress chuckled. "Your Majesty, you still have the mood to joke with Commander Xiao, Xiaoli scolded. The demonic son of the evil demon has always acted together, and there is one guy who hasn't been caught, which is a big problem. If you want her to organize the hidden dark elves in Zhongjing and make a big mess, the consequences are unimaginable. Your Majesty wants to sit on the throne of the state for a lifetime, and can't even eat, drink, and do anything. The Empress scratched her head and chuckled foolishly. Indeed, Xiaoli is reliable. My mind is in a mess and I don't even know where to start. Xiaoli patted her not-so-great chest and said, leave it to me, give me an official title. The Empress broke off jade-like fingers one by one, the faithful sisters of the daughter of the Holy Mountain, the faithful maid of the Empress, the head of the inner court, the commander of the Yulin Weidu, Shang's Huguo, the founding marquis, the minister of war, the minister of punishment. She smiled and said, I've given you a bunch of official titles, and when I asked you to stay at a hotel and report your name, the boss said there weren't enough people to accommodate. Ha! How did you get it back? Xiaoli took out 3 stacks of golden dragon tickets and said, later on, I realized that giving him such a large sum of money was not a cause for trouble. When I asked, it was indeed withheld, so I had to take it back. Moreover, this is the pocket money prepared for the young lady to play in Zhongjing. Even if the young lady becomes the queen and doesn't lack money, she can't waste it casually. I'm sorry, the queen lowered her head, like a child who had done something wrong. Xiaoli handed her the golden dragon ticket and said, I should have said I'm sorry, I should have. Then don't even say it, the Empress covered her mouth and Lu Yi furrowed her brows. What should we do then? He must have cursed very harshly this time. Xiaoli rubbed her forehead and said, look at what happened. Who should be blamed? The night is deep, and the tattered steam car is parked in front of the alley. Gauda pushed the door and got out of the car. No one in this world can understand bird language. Sheetfox scolded incessantly. Is this the car that people take? The car door clanged to the ground, and the person escorting him in the back seat used a boiler to hook up the car door. The technique was skilled and experienced, and he smiled at Gauda with pride instead of shame. Gauda ignored him and focused on rubbing his buttocks, causing tears to come out in pain. The department with a beard was actually in the suburbs, sitting on a broken car that had already passed its scrapped age and had no seat sponge left. It was driving on a gravel road, bumping its butt like a pile driver. It took at least an hour to drive a pile before entering the city, and the bones were all thinned by the pounding. Obviously, it was a deliberate detour. It was really a small temple demon with a strong wind, and Gauda's perception of these mysterious companions was getting worse and worse. Anyway, I won't be able to see you anymore, so I'll suffer this once. But the ointment there is really good, his neck is already healed. Returning home with the food still on the table, a blurry broadcast came from the room at the other end of the small building. Gauda raised his voice and shouted, Did you stay in bed listening to the broadcast all day? How late is it? There's no telling how late it is. The door creaked open, revealing a yellow-haired head and a pretty face that appeared unusually fierce due to its grinning teeth. How late is it? How dare you say, me? The food has been heated 3 times and you haven't come back yet. Gao Miao stretched out his head and roared, Are you fooling around with old man he in Green Sleeve Lane again? You've had enough wine, tofu, and red envelopes, right? Are you happy? Why bother me? This girl is quite dedicated to her home, as evidenced by the food on the table. But he always talks about Green Sleeve Fong and sees his brother as a little white face who eats soft food. He can tolerate his sister Law, but he can't tolerate it. When it came to the old man, his mood turned bad, and when he saw the yellow hair dyed on her head, Gauda was even more infuriated. Are you still out today? You dyed your dog hair and who are you trying to provoke? As he scolded, he caught a glimpse of the scene in the crack of the door and glared, Wait, what are you wearing? Gao Mayapeng closed the door and was pushed open by Gauda before he could catch the latch. The yellow-haired girl in a bright red robe stumbled backwards and was thrown onto the bed by Gauda, carrying her belt. Do you think this is a theatrical costume to wear casually? Gauda gritted his clothes with a smoky expression. The Ming dynasty's royal guards in this world also have flying fish costumes, but only big shots from over 1,000 households can wear them. The formal attire of the grassroots Jinui is just a mixed suit of flying beasts, and this bright red flying leopard suit was only worn by him for various ceremonial tasks. Can you save dim sum? It's against the rules. It's a sin to be seen at home. Go on the street and be watched by the royal guards in other places. Understand? He scolded while picking up beasts. Hooligans. Gao Miao punched and kicked, unable to defeat the towering Gauda. In just a few strokes, he was stripped of his small clothes and rolled and screamed on the bed like a gust of wind. Gauda felt a bit guilty and realized that he was venting negative emotions such as fear, anger, and regret on his sister. He had a wonderful day. Tomorrow I'll accompany you to wash your hair and buy you some clothes, he said in a relaxed tone, using the same trick he used to coax his sister when he was a child. It's not taboo to wear the same style of colorful clothes. Go away. Gao Miao didn't give him a good face. Gauda sighed and could only let her remain quiet for now. He said in a muffled tone, "Old man, he died. I'm lucky enough to survive. You should have heard the news of the empress's accession, and Zhongjing will be in chaos for a while. If you really don't go out tomorrow, I'll take a leave for you at school." After sticking to the door and listening for a while, Gao Miao was still crying in bed. Gauda left helplessly and didn't bring up his meal. It was already midnight when I went to bed, and when I turned on the radio, as I had said, the old crown prince was seriously ill and gave way to Princess Emoli. Listen and listen, Gauda falls asleep. In his dream, he seemed to have stepped into an endless plain of pure white snow, with a cool and fragrant air that was reminiscent of the fragrance of gardenia flowers. Come out. The crisp sound of ice-edge collision made his heart beat faster, and he suddenly woke up when he heard someone knocking on the window glass in a daze. Turning around outside, the snow-white figure stood at the end of the corridor in the neighboring courtyard, seemingly within reach of him. Under the moonlight, there was a faint blue halo, and the whole person was glowing. End of this chapter. Chapter 8008. Tonight's moon is bright and round. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8008. Tonight's moon is bright and round. Gauda felt like he was still in a dream, surrounded by a layer of mist. Only these two courtyards were clear and picturesque. He doesn't understand why she came to him again. Is she going to kill someone and silence her? Those golden dragon tickets have special significance. I forgot about them at that time. The girl threw down the stone in her hand and turned to the beginning, saying, "I won't take advantage of others for nothing. I'm here to see how to compensate you. Did you find someone to take it back? What kind of person are you?" Gauda was extremely surprised. Even the commanders of the Feather Forest Guard and the Royal Guards can command you. Are you from the Queen's side? The distance between the two sides is only 3 or 4 meters, and the girl's chirping can be heard clearly. I don't know what it means. I am just a small person who specializes in dealing with demons. I have never thought of serving the Ming dynasty. I just know the maidservants next to the Empress and can only speak a few words. That's a folk expert. The crisis has been resolved, and Gauda's courage has increased, and his mind has also become dizzy. Speaking of which, I took advantage. You saved my life, so there's no need for compensation. If you insist, he doesn't think that such a goddess-like character is something he can pursue, but flirting with girls is a man's nature. Tell me your name, that's enough. The girl gave him a slanted glance and shook her head slowly. Generally speaking, you did take advantage, but in my opinion, you have no right to say that. Gauda almost choked on his saliva. There's something wrong with your values, girl. Wait, if we understand general principles as tool principles, that's right. What qualifies a vibrating therapy stick to claim to have taken advantage of a person? Tell me, what do you want? The girl became impatient and said, if it's still money, it's okay. What I'm taking back is not money, it's just those golden dragon tickets. Gouda is overjoyed. Since that's the case, why bother so much? Why don't you just transfer the money to me? Just as I was about to respond, a sudden inspiration struck me, and I cursed myself for being foolish enough. This is a big shot who can talk to the queen's maid. When it comes to what I want, I am just a small genie colonel, and it is my duty to love and work hard. Gouda sincerely reveals his heart, of course, with a sense of righteousness. What I want, like all the great sons and daughters in the world, is to live a peaceful life with my family. It's impossible to do this with money alone. The girl nodded in agreement, even feeling a little sad. Indeed, this is not something that money can solve. Just now, when we talked about the empress, the girl looked up at the rare bright full moon in Zhongjing and suddenly changed the topic. Daming had an empress for the first time, what do you think? I must kowtow when I see the queen, of course, with the back of my head. Gouda's face was solemn and devout. I was born a person of the Ming dynasty, and death is a ghost of the Ming dynasty. Your Majesty and the Ming dynasty are inseparable, and I am absolutely loyal to your Majesty. Seeing the girl slightly tugging at the corner of her mouth, as if mocking, a flame ignited in Gouda's heart. Even a man didn't want to be looked down upon by a woman. But your Majesty, it's difficult now, he said in a deeply worried tone. That's all I'm worried about. The silver-gray pupils of the girl's eyes lit slightly. Since you are aware of the Empress's situation, what do you think she should do? Of course, it's a kind-hearted person and a distant gentleman. Cough cough. Gouda confiscated it and shut up. I haven't read many books, only a few thousand volumes, but I have also learned similar principles. The girl was somewhat surprised. What I'm saying is, a gentleman is far from a person. Thousands of books made Gouda tremble in his heart, but he didn't want to give up the opportunity to finally suppress her. The villain I'm talking about is a mediocre person who only knows how to do things. In my past life, I was exposed to the poison of rotten chicken soup and the title party every day, and I still have some experience in this. A gentleman is a noble person who stands tall in a temple, full of the teachings and wisdom of his ancestors' family. The girl exclaimed, her pupils even brighter. Gouda continued to output, a villain has no reliance and can only be absolutely loyal to Her Majesty. A gentleman is united in his loyalty to Her Majesty, and loyalty is not so absolute. If loyalty is not absolute, it is absolute disloyalty. Well said, the girl surprisingly smiled. What you mean is that we need to select absolutely loyal people from the humble and rely on them to govern the country. She actually took it seriously, those high-ranking people who only know how to reason must be replaced. Is that all? It's too easy to turn over. Even Gouda feels guilty, how could politics be so simple? This is not a Japanese anime world. Her Majesty, if she hears these words, she will only find them childish and ridiculous, considering that she can talk to the Queen's maid. God added a patch. Her Majesty the Empress is wise and wise, with profound knowledge. Even a petty person like me cannot catch up on a plane, so it's better to handle things honestly. The girl turned her head and stroked her hair. The pointed earlobes under her snow-white hair were pink and crystal clear, exceptionally tempting. That's right, let me tell you what to do with these things. The girl regained her initial indifferent tone. Just say what you want, as long as it's not too outrageous, it will be as you wish. Can I have you? Gouda carefully considered this request and felt that it was too risky. It's better not to forget his original intention of earning a retirement pension. Of course, what I want is to be loyal to the Empress and contribute my humble efforts to building a happy and stable Ming dynasty, Gouda boldly quoted. Of course, money is also essential. With 10,000 golden dragons and a suitable position, that's enough. A suitable position. The girl frowned slightly, unable to understand for a moment. It's about being able to fully utilize my abilities, so that I can remain loyal to the position of the Empress for a lifetime, Gauda had to say more clearly. For example, to be promoted to a minor official in the royal guards and manage a leisurely yamen with less dangerous tasks and plenty of free time. Of course, this is only superficial, and I will do things that are more beneficial to the Empress when I have free time. Marrying 3 wives and 4 concubines, striving to reproduce and contribute more loyal people to the Ming dynasty, is certainly beneficial to Her Majesty the Empress. The girl suddenly nodded and said, "You are truly loyal to the Queen." Feeling something was wrong, Gauda could only grit his head and say, living a stable life and being loyal to Her Majesty are 2 sides of the same page of paper that cannot be separated. I understand, it will be as you wish. The white light on the girl's body rippled faintly, seeming to switch between reality and illusion. Your loyalty will be rewarded. The feeling of being wrong became even stronger, and Gauda was afraid that she would misunderstand. He quickly applied a new patch and said, "I have low abilities and cannot take on big responsibilities. I just want to be unknown." Got it. By the way, my name is Li. The fish is beautiful in Lu. The girl's figure gradually faded away, and her final words fell from the sky. A very vulgar name, don't take it to heart. There is also the book of songs in this world, which I have learned in school. Gauda knows what the character is. The name is indeed tacky, and there is not a single word, it's really insincere. But next time we meet, there won't be any psychological barriers when we shout, Xiaoli. Hey, Xiaoli. Gauda knocked on his forehead, no wonder it was tacky, even a girl called Xiaoli. The mist dissipated, and the clear and picturesque feeling of things also disappeared. Looking at the blurry moon again, Gauda felt lost and wanted to recite poetry. The moon tonight is bright and round. Standing in the ancestral mountain, the night sky is always so clear, and the moon is indeed bright and round. There is a dangerous peak deep in Zushan Mountain, which is covered with white snow all year round, and there is continuous melting of ice and snow. Snowy water flows down the mountainside, merging into a waterfall and falling into a vast pool of water. Through the roaring silver long curtain, one could vaguely see the eaves, beams, and columns, which turned out to be a palace hidden in a water-curtain cave. In the hall is a hot spring filled with mist, and the water in the pool is very shallow. The bottom of the pool, made of colorful round stones, seems to be within reach. The end of the pool suddenly lit up with white light, swallowing and contracting, as if pulling a strange force from the underworld, causing the space to sway and ripple. The white light condensed into a figure, with white hair and white clothes, and picturesque eyebrows. It was the girl who called herself beautiful to Gauda. The girl stepped in the pool that only soaked her thighs, but it felt like she was stepping in the air, her steps unstoppable. Every step she takes, the white light on her body dissipates a bit. That is the inherent light of clothing. The long sleeves were taken off, and the hem of the skirt flew away, turning into crystal clear ice dust, lingering around her and drifting away. Ice dust carries the ultimate power of ice and cold, freezing a crystal clear ice path where the girl passed by. The last strand of fabric scattered into ice dust, revealing the slender and straight green body, reflecting the layered white jade brilliance in the clear ice path. The girl stepped out of the pool, carrying a misty ice mist. She grabbed her long hair and shook it, then released a large mist of ice. The snow-white color with an icy blue halo faded away, and when the hair fell, it had become black and shiny like silk. The girl spat out white mist, and her silver-gray pupils turned back to deep brown. During the transition of light and shadow, the serene and stunning appearance underwent a slight transformation, as if jumping from the ink painting scroll into the frame of an oil painting. In the blink of an eye, the lively and beautiful girl in the daytime, who dominated the courtiers in the temple hall, reappeared. She touched her chest, and the injuries there were no traces. The ignorant little girl, the free-spirited daughter of the holy mountain, became a thing of the past on the same day. The girl took off the clothes prepared on the hanger and muttered while wearing them, unsure if it was a lament or self-deprecation. That's great, it's quite convenient. End of this chapter. Chapter 9009. Continuous promotion to level 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9009. Continuous promotion to level 5 at the southern foot of Zushan Mountain. The Qianming Hall on the west side of Wuzhong Palace is filled with noisy voices. Countless male voices shout, "Where is your majesty?" and, "Why hasn't your majesty come yet?" The female voice is the only one, with a deep anger about to break the ice. "When will your majesty come? Is it up to your officials to decide?" Officials who possess both civil and military skills are clearly impatient, and some have shouted, "Has the empress also had an accident? You, a woman from Fusang, are trying to usurp the throne. Your Majesty. Long live your Majesty. Long live your Majesty." The Empress, dressed in her daytime attire, walked out of the back hall. The old civil servant, dressed in crane patchwork and wearing a long winged gauze hat, knelt down and kowtowed, while other officials quickly followed suit. "Your Majesty." The Feathered Forest Guard and the Genie Guard are the Emperor's personal troops, and personnel appointments and dismissals are His Majesty's divine orders. However, important positions such as the Ministry of War, the Ministry of Justice, and the Zhongjing Prefecture must be selected by the Cabinet and then submitted to Your Majesty for selection, otherwise it will not comply with the rules. Old Wen Chen trembled with a grey beard, his words were deep and sincere. "Let's not worry about this matter for now. We will investigate the royal officials' homes and request Your Majesty to take it back. Once this order is issued, there will be great chaos in the central capital." The Queen frowned with displeasure as she looked at the only scholar who had voluntarily pledged allegiance to her. "What other rules do we need? I have to obtain someone else's consent to be appointed as an official, so who is the Emperor on earth? What's wrong with checking the homes? There are still evil demons lurking in Zhongjing, only you nobles can hide them. Without checking, are you waiting for you to join her in the same league, damage the Ming dynasty and even destroy the continent of Zhendan?" The scholar was so anxious that he almost gritted his teeth. "Your Majesty, that's the truth. But when we do things, we must follow the rules and prioritize our scores. Your Majesty should also see it by day. Now is the time when people's hearts are unstable. We need to first stabilize our hearts and distinguish between close and distant ones." The Queen sat on a much simpler throne than the throne of the state, her fingers tapping on the armrest, her gaze somewhat blurred. "Are you talking about being close to someone?" "Well, being close to a gentleman and far away from someone." The Grand Secretary nodded incessantly, and the Empress patted the armrest with an unquestionable tone. "It's about scoring points to determine whether one is loyal or not to me. Whoever is loyal to me, I will kiss them." "Bah! Who is important, can you still teach me this?" "Grand Master, let's start from your family." The scholar stiffened and lowered his voice, saying, "I have never raised any dark elves in my family. If this statement is false, it will be struck by thunder and lightning. I can also use the head of Xiang to guarantee the lives of other high-ranking scholars. I beg your Majesty to take back his life and leave some dignity for the important officials of the country. Your dignity is more important than the rivers and mountains of the Ming dynasty, the safety of Zhendan, and the life and death of billions of people." The Empress was a bit angry, and she didn't understand why the old man resisted so much. "If you were loyal to the Ming dynasty, shouldn't you take the initiative to undergo an investigation and prove your innocence?" The scholar was speechless and his throat was whimpering. The other officials were hunched and wished they could roll up into shrimp. At the next moment, the great scholar's eyes rolled over and he fell to the ground, arousing screams of surprise. As the guards lifted the Grand Master, there was a continuous popping sound in the hall, and more than half of the people fell to the ground. Not only are they unconscious, but there are also those who fiddle and even vomit. Ah! The queen pinched her nose and said in disgust, "You people are really fragile. You can't bear any pressure." The office location was moved to the back hall, leaving only a sparse group of more than 10 officials, all of whom were leaders of powerful departments under the departments of Yuan Guard, Genie Guard, Ministry of War, Ministry of Justice, Inspectorate, Dali Temple, Zhongjing Prefecture, and others. Investigate the families of royal officials, search for the hidden places of corruption in the central capital, and make sure to find that dark elf demon, the Empress said sternly, which not only concerns the safety of Zhendan, but also her own situation. For a limited period of half a month, under the full control of the general manager of Yuansika, I will bestow upon her the Shangfang sword, and whoever fails to devote themselves will have their head killed. The officials all had no face, and their anger was like a flowing thread. They followed suit and walked away like a group of zombies. I'm afraid this way won't work. The rear hall was left with only the emperor and his ministers, silent for a long time, and Xiaoli hesitated to speak. No matter how complex and difficult the situation may be, I can arrange it properly, provided that the manpower is as reliable as Xing Tian, or at least as reassuring as the alternate Xing Tian. These people. I have a black eye and don't know if they can be used. The Empress rubbed her brows and said, I know it's not possible, but the matter with the demon child is so urgent. Aren't there many absolutely loyal people standing up to share my worries? By the way, what about him? Xiaoli asked the Empress about her previous whereabouts. He should be absolutely loyal to you, right? The Empress's mood suddenly improved. She raised her eyebrows and spoke at an extremely fast pace, saying that if God were here, she would definitely be pounding her chest and feet. Of course, he is well aware that being loyal to me is being loyal to the Ming dynasty. He also understands my current situation and wants to do something for me. However, he has self-awareness and knows that his abilities are low, and he only wants to work in the dark and do things that are not suitable for public disclosure. Xiaoli nodded while listening. It's okay, it's not in vain. She felt remorseful and guilty again. It would have been better if I had gone after that black-skinned bean sprout at the entrance of Zushan at that time, so I wouldn't have let you. Didn't you stop saying sorry after saying it? The Empress rebuked. Evil demons are very tricky. I've had some problems. Wouldn't it be even worse if it were you? When it comes to this queen, there are lingering palpitations in my heart. God bless me for meeting him, and recognizing him would make me almost nervous. Yeah, it's really a coincidence. Xiaoli squeezed her eyes and joked at the Empress. Niamo likes to do that kind of thing, but in your form as the Holy One of Ice, hasn't you reached that level yet? Did you throw yourself into it? How dare you say it? Although you don't feel like you're at a loss, it's not something worth being happy about. The Empress knocked on the table confidently. It wasn't because you sent me several urgent messages saying something was wrong at the Temple of Heaven. How could I choose the most embarrassing way? Of course, if it weren't for him, there wouldn't have been such an option. That guy is really lucky. Xiaoli chuckled and shook her head. If it were me, I would definitely fry it first and then sprinkle it. The queen puffed up her cheeks to pretend to be angry, and Xiaoli turned back to her serious face. Then bring him to your side and take care of the entire royal guards. The Empress hesitated for a while and remained silent. After a long time, she slowly shook her head and said, he is ultimately immortal. The danger we face is not something he can afford, so. Xiaoli gradually smiled and said, take him as a souvenir and keep him safe. Zhu Moli will have to live for the Ming dynasty in this lifetime. The Empress sighed and let out a strong tiredness. Li should be free, he is Li. In short, it's just to hide. Xiaoli nodded. If it were me, I would do the same. Let me see if there is any leisure yamen in the royal guards that can provide him with retirement. She took out a booklet and flipped through it with a clatter, as if it were 10 pages at a time. The pages stopped and she presented the booklet to the queen. This department is the busiest, how about it? That's great. I didn't expect there to be such a department in the royal guards that has nothing to do with dangerous things. The empress was very satisfied. But I don't need him to do anything, just let him retire peacefully there. She never hesitated to praise the young Fusang girl who had been following her since childhood. Little love is still powerful, and it was solved in the blink of an eye. I'll write a decree for you to let that guy take over early in the morning. Xiaoli's expression darkened. I used to be very confident in my ability and thought it was enough to share your worries, but now it seems like there's still a lot to go. The affairs of the departments like Hanlin Wei and Genie Wei are easy to handle, but those ministers. Speaking of this queen, she also became distressed. Yes, fighting demons is much easier. Why can't these guys just click on one and respond with 100 times more energy like playing chess games, waiting for my command? She looked at Xiaoli and said seriously, but I won't back down or give up. Xiaoli, just like we killed demons on the holy mountain, continue to help me. The Fusang girl pressed her chest and lowered her head deeply, saying, Varsaka love will always follow you, serve you, and never give up until death. The queen lifted her up and said with satisfaction, I'm glad, at least I still have you. The empress patted a pile of documents and archives on the desk and said, we have to stay up all night. First, we need to figure out how much wealth and trouble this Ming dynasty still has. The lights in the back hall of the Qianming Hall remained on all night, and in the small courtyard north of the West City, Gouda was also restless. He didn't even know what he was thinking until dawn, when drowsiness gradually suppressed his eyelids. Just as I closed my eyes, the door was knocked with a thud. Opening the door to see the incoming person clearly, Gouda knelt down on one knee and arched his hand, shouting, Your Highness. The newcomer was a middle-aged chubby man dressed in a big red flying fish suit, with a fat belly and a jade belt hanging up to his chest, surrounded by a group of brocade guards who were at least the general flag. Gouda recognized at a glance that it was actually Ma Jinsher, the person in charge of personnel in the Genie Guard. Oh, Brother Gao, don't dare to be or not. The prominent figure who had appeared at the West City branch of the patrol station with his hands folded and his belly unsmiling laughed like a waitress in a tavern. They are all emperors. Your Majesty's own soldiers, no matter how big or small they are, get up quickly. With his own hand supporting Gouda, the chubby man's face turned straight and he said, Genie Colonel Gouda has received the order. Nima is playing with me, isn't I kneeling again? Gouda had to kneel down again, this time on both knees. I'm not really angry, but rather very happy. Don't be fooled by Xiaoli being a commoner, her efficiency is comparable to giving the Empress a pillow edge. And it's for the Empress to personally give orders, no wonder Minister Ma personally came over. What a big mess. Ascend to the 100 households of the Genie Guard. Still responsible for managing hundreds of households in the elephant training station. Gouda's mind is a bit dizzy. Including the 2 levels of Deputy 100 Household and Trial 100 Household, he will be promoted to 5 levels in a row. Wait for the elephant training facility digging out information from various departments of the royal guards in his mind. Gao Deshan wanted to shout, Long live Xiaoli, while shouting, Long live Xiaoli. When the Daming Jinui was not yet a peripheral role in the imperial guards, he was always responsible for the ceremonial guard of the Emperor Wanjia. When the emperor goes on a tour, there must be fierce beasts such as elephants, lions and tigers, Qilin, and Pishio to make their way. The royal guards have set up elephant training facilities to raise these fierce beasts. With the changes of the times, the emperor directly traveled by car, train, or even plane or airship, and these beasts were no longer useful. But no one knows if the emperor will have a sudden idea to hold a grand ceremony to restore the ancient style and enjoy with the people, and the elephant training station has never been abolished. This is really a leisurely elderly care department, and the layout is not small. The elephant training station doesn't sound good, how about replacing it with the Daming Royal Zoo? Fortunately, I was not fooled by that little golden ticket. Gouda greatly admired me and gave up 20,000 golden dragons in exchange for this position. Don't make too much profit from this transaction. Go back and greet Gao Miao, asking her to stay at home honestly. Gouda is hugged by Ma Jinshe and wears a shiny and gorgeous steam car with golden edges embedded on his shoulder. A group of steam cars rushed forward, with a small yellow-haired head protruding from the door and a teary face full of worry and regret. Brother Gao Miao sniffed and muttered, "You need to come back early." The convoy pulled its whistle and raced all the way, ignoring the traffic lights. In half an hour, it left the city and headed straight for the animal park in the south. That's right, there is a zoo open to the general public there. When Gouda was a child, he went to it with his father a few times. I didn't expect that animal park to be the property of the royal guards. Gouda is dealing with overly enthusiastic matters related to Ma Jin while calculating his salary and even retirement pension. When the convoy turned into a dirt and gravel road 2 or 3 miles away from the animal park, their buttocks began to pile up again. When Ma Jinshe frequently said things like young achievements and heavy responsibilities on his shoulders, Gouda's heart also followed suit, jumping incessantly. The convoy drove into a courtyard surrounded by high walls and stopped in front of a 3-story stone building resembling a fortress. Several dozen people lined up below the main building, and Gouda smelled a familiar smell in the car, his heart racing in a raging curve. After getting off the car and following behind Ma Jinshe, he walked towards the group of genie guards kneeling on the ground. This is the newly appointed centurion. Ma Jinshe screamed in a sharp voice, the centurion appointed by Her Majesty the Empress. Everyone lowered their heads and called out to the 100 households, and Gouda stood in front of them in a daze. When the leader lifted his head, the two of them had their eyes fixed on each other. Worry. Gouda's neck started to ache again, it was the mustache that almost broke his neck on his knees. My grass. My beard and mouth are so wide that I can count the number of cavities. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Xiaoli, you are writing me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Xiaoli, you are writing me. Ma Jinshe had a difficult time playing the role of Gouda on the scene, and tried hard to fit into the role of Xian news boss, completing the scene with great difficulty. As the convoy left the courtyard, he reached out to grab his beard by the collar to ask a question. The other person leaned over and arched his hand, saying from the bottom of his heart, Mr. Bai has hidden so deeply, I admire him. Obviously, he treated his performance yesterday as an act, and with a tremble of his hand, Gouda changed to supporting others, it's easy to say. Caught by Xiaoli. The Elephant Training Institute is just a cover, it is actually a mysterious department in the Royal Guards that specializes in handling the affairs of supernatural beings. Is this a place where one can earn a retirement pension safely? With a tumultuous stomach full of bitterness and confusion, Gouda entered the hall of the building under the guidance of his beard, sat on the main seat and received an audience from the people from the Elephant Training Center. The former Baihu was just a nominal name, and the actual situation was handled by Wang Kunlun, who is also known as this bearded cuisine. This man is just a general flag. After 5 or 6 years in the Elephant Training Center, he has become an old fogey. There are still 3 main flags that have not appeared. Old Gu and grandmother Sun were busy in the workshop. They were sick and never showed up. The old Marquis was in charge of the animal park, and he didn't know that the 100 households had arrived. Since the adults came here to serve, they naturally knew the details of our elephant training center. The animal park to the south was our industry, and we had been losing money mainly by filling the facade. Gouda doesn't know much, but fortunately, after more than a year of working with his master, he has some understanding of the art of speaking. I'm still a newcomer, so General Wang treated me as if I didn't know anything and explained it to me in detail. The elephant training station is divided into several departments, including on-site service, equipment and medicine workshops, animal parks, and logistics, with a staff of 120 people, for main flags, and 10 small flags. More than 300 temporary workers are not on the payroll, and 1/3 of them are retired and rehired. Just this little person, not to mention Zhongjing with a total population of nearly 100 million, even the supernatural beings in Xicheng cannot be controlled. Gouda was flipping through the ledger, feeling a constant murmur in his heart. The western branch of the patrol station is at the level of 1,000 households, with a fixed number of 1,200 people and over 5,000 temporary workers. Wang Kunlun led Gouda up to the second floor. Gouda's 100-household office was not yet cleaned up on the third floor, so he had to go to Wang Kunlun's office. To be honest, Gouda felt that the underground reception room was more comfortable. Lord Baihu is a person next to Her Majesty the Queen, urged Gouda to climb onto his leather swivel chair, which was covered in patches. With a smile on his beard, he said, "It's hard to understand why you're such a newcomer here. To be honest, it's hard to understand your lowly position." In the beginning, Emperor Taizu built the Elephant Training Institute under the pretext of using this name to deceive people and let the royal guards manage all the affairs of the world's supernatural beings. However, that was the beginning of the country, and now the situation is completely different. Continue, Gouda remained calm on his face, but his heart churned. It sounded like there was still something to say, different from what he had thought. Nowadays, every department is in charge of the affairs of the supernatural powers, Wang Kunlun said with a bitter smile. The Temple Tomb Guard and the Feathered Forest Guard are not to be mentioned. Anything related to the demonic world, or directly related to the safety of the Emperor, as well as supernatural powers above the legend, is under their management, and other departments have to take action on their behalf. Under them, the 7 cities Military and Horse Division of the Ministry of War established a special reporting office to manage the affairs of the supernatural beings who were causing trouble on the streets of Zhongjing. The Water Affairs Office of the Jinko Division and the Water Affairs Office of the Ministry of Justice were in charge of the supernatural beings related to the underground. The Reporting Office of the Serious Cases Division of Zhongjing Prefecture was in charge of the streets, underground, and households. In short, as long as there were supernatural beings in Zhongjing, they could manage them. If the psychic is involved in large amounts of silver and money transactions, the Handling Office of the Ministry of Revenue's Accounting Department should also intervene. If there are abnormal drugs or equipment in the case, the Department of Prohibitions and Control of the Ministry of War and the Department of Investigation of the Ministry of Justice should also be in charge. The Ministry of Personnel, the Inspectorate, the Dali Temple, and even the Ministry of Rights, the Imperial Household Department, and the Imperial Household Department all have departments in charge of the psychic. These are just departments concentrated in the central capital, including the Railway Department, Vehicle and Ship Department, Air Transport Department, Telegraph Department of the Ministry of Works, Investigation Department of the Ministry of Justice, and county government offices of various states, all of which are competing for the management of the world's superpowers. With more work, more power, and more staffing expenses. Of course, there are other nominal terms, and this adult definitely understands them. The situation introduced by Wang Kunlun is completely different from Gouda's feelings as a grassroots Jinyui. He has also been exposed to many cases of supernatural beings, although various departments have intervened. In the end, it was the Jinyui who took over. Secondly, each department is actually managing the affairs of the supernatural beings, as if there are many supernatural beings on the street. Gouda subconsciously asked, "Don't talk about the world, it's just Zhongjing. There are so many cases of supernatural beings that all departments need to intervene. Why don't the people feel anything?" His beard showed a smile that pierced through his cecum, and he immediately lowered his head to conceal it. Taizu left behind secret teachings that future generations would never dare to disobey. He explained in a deep and mournful tone, that is to prevent the people from feeling fearful or joyful about the appearance of the supernatural, nor from feeling fearful or joyful about the disappearance of the supernatural. In short, to prevent the people from feeling that the supernatural is by their side. So from Zhongjing to the local area, all traces of supernatural beings' existence must be removed, and no link must be missed from the scene to public opinion. At first, Gao De suddenly became confused, and then he raised even greater doubts. The secret teachings of Taizu have been leaked, and the existence of the supernatural beings has long been known to the world. Even the grassroots genie guards at his and his master's level have been exposed to the case of the supernatural beings. What secret is this guarding? The Ming dynasty has been around for thousands of years. Wang Kunlun spread his hand and said, no matter how strict the rules are, we can't abide by them for so long. Moreover, the activities of the supernatural beings are so frequent that even if there are many departments in charge, they still cannot manage them. During the establishment of the country, the supernatural beings would cause trouble in the city, and the whole street would have to be sent to the border fortress. Is it possible now? In today's Ming dynasty, everyone is just pretending to be a superpower or a secret. Wang Kunlun's expression became somewhat complicated. However, by following the old rules and pretending, everyone has had an unexpected effect. There are only a few people who have had actual contact with supernatural beings. As long as the government uses murder, natural disasters, and various accidents to cover up and firmly does not recognize the existence of supernatural beings, those things are mixed with ghosts and gods, becoming a common legend. Even if a few people know the truth, they cannot make a sound and cannot affect people's hearts around the world. Thinking of his actions yesterday, Gao De had to admit that he was also a small part of the vast system of pretending to be a superpower or a secret. When you think about the internet in previous lives, that's really true. The Ming dynasty in this world has newspapers, radio, and even television, and the flow of information has become frequent and rapid. This does not mean that the truth is harder to conceal. On the contrary, it is easier to deceive the public. Gao De turned to the main topic. Our elephant training center and other departments are all in charge of supernatural beings, but their respective origins are different. What is our origin? Wang Kunlun remained silent for 2 seconds, then with an expression of readiness to endure the storm, he reluctantly revealed the truth. At the local level, each department cleans up their own cases of supernatural beings. In Zhongjing, those cases of supernatural beings that leave traces are cleaned up by our elephant training center. After all, according to tradition, our elephant training center is the only department responsible for supernatural beings' affairs, while other departments only manage supernatural beings' activities related to their own affairs. Yesterday, when I met you, I received instructions from the Yulin Wei to rush to clean up the scene. The Elephant Training Center is indeed in charge of the affairs of the supernatural beings, but it is only in charge of their aftermath. Aha! On the seat, Gao De's eyes were wide and round, looking as if he was furious, but in fact, he was so happy that he wanted to dance. Surprisingly, I misunderstood Xiaoli. Just collect the corpses and write a report, without a schedule or KPI. This is indeed a place for retirement and retirement benefits. No wonder I felt that all the cases of psychics were still managed by the royal guards before, but it was actually this elephant trainer who went to collect corpses and wash the ground. With a loud bang, Gao De slapped the table and got angry. How could one be so willing to fall from grace? The humiliations suffered underground, neck injuries, and ridicule in the reception room turned into anger, and Gao De passionately scolded his beard. How can we be loyal to the empress like this, and how can we still have a bright future? I'm not sure about what you're saying. I'm here to revitalize the Elephant Training Center and turn it into a sword in the hands of Her Majesty. If you still have a bit of blood, you should feel ashamed of the current situation of the Elephant Training Center. Is this still the prestigious Royal Guards Elephant Training Center in people's hearts? You must be ashamed. With his beard curled up into shrimp, he arched his hands and said, yes, yes. What Lord Baihu said is right. I am humble and have no respect for the people in charge. Only Lord Baihu is obedient. This attitude is good. If you passionately say you want to achieve some results, it actually worries me. Gao Dexin said that he has learned a lot from his master. Although the old man is just a small flag, he also manages dozens of school captains and even gamers. It's really something to be able to manage most of the naughty guys obediently. The spraying was refreshing and continued. The young man who had once escorted him home and hooked the car door with a boiler bar knocked on the door and came in. This kid is chubby and very wealthy. He is a small flag under Wang Kunlun's command, and he remembers his surname Lu. Lu Xiaopeng trembled in his throat and said, Lin Tongji. No, Commander Lin is here, only 100 households. Wang Kunlun's waist straightened with a thud, Commander Lin. Last night, both the commander and several commanders had grown old. The acting chief of the imperial court next to the empress promoted Lin Tongji to be the commander in charge of specific affairs. Wang Kunlun's message was quite clear. He came to find Lord Baihu, probably. When it came to this, his face changed and his waist bent down again. I'm talking nonsense about my lowly position, he said. Gao De hurried away, with his beard and Lu Xiaopeng still in a daze, and a pile of heads squeezed out of the door. Boss, how's it going? What exactly is the origin of this little white face? Is our elephant training place a pill? The subordinates asked anxiously, rubbing their beards and saying, Don't worry, not even a psychic. We're just going through the motions, let's find a way to calm him down. The phone on the table rang, and the person with a beard rushed to close the door. Get up. The subordinates outside the door couldn't help but turn pale and look at each other in surprise at his repeated screams of, I grass, what, half a month, and, grass his ancestors. Downstairs, Gao De held a piece of paper in one hand and a file bag in the other, staring straight at the big shot wearing a flying fish suit, his stomach boiling with shetfark. Commander, are you joking? He asked with a hint of luck, is elephant training all about? The half-old man, whose sideburns and goatee were already grayish-white, slapped Gao De on the shoulder, treating him warmly like a nephew. Gao Baihu was commissioned by Her Majesty the Empress, and it must have been for this matter. Who else can he entrust to besides you? In an instant, he turned serious and said, The affairs of the supernatural are originally under the jurisdiction of elephant tamers. How can we shirk responsibility? No, Gao De felt his legs weaken. What about other units? Such a big deal. Other units are still busy, said the half-old man, who was the newly appointed commander of the Genie Guard, Mr. Lin. The warrant has been delivered, and the money has also been given to you. I haven't even lost a single one. Alright, we're waiting for good news from Gao Baihu. Waving his hand, Commander Lin turned around and left. Gao De grabbed his sleeve and didn't explain everything clearly. How could he leave? Gao Baihu. Commander Lin didn't look back and spoke in a chilling tone, I also bear the responsibility for this matter. If I don't complete the task by the deadline, Her Majesty will chop off my head. So regardless of Gao Baihu's background, before my head falls, Gao Baihu's head will fall first. Commander Lin brushed his sleeves away, and the steam car whizzed out the phantom and swept away, leaving behind Gao De, who gritted his teeth and wished to eat him raw, to eat the dirt. The paper in Gao De's hand is a life and death warrant covered with the bright red seal of the royal guards. Within 10 days, the demon son of the evil demon must be caught, and the head cannot be killed. Watching Commander Lin's car leave, Gao De opened his file bag in a daze. Inside, there are stacked golden dragon tickets with notes pasted on them, which are payment receipts with the words, special expenses, written on them. The 10,000 golden dragons he wanted turned out to be public funds allocated to the Elephant Training Center. For a moment, the sky and earth changed color, and the sun and moon disappeared. Finally, Gao De erupted. Full of indignation turned into a silent roar, surging in my stomach like thunder and wind. Xiaoli. Worry, your uncle. End of this chapter.